This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 320, How to Build a Daily Sales Activity Process, an interview with Lisa Torrez.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Back in February, pre-pandemic, I completed my last in-person interview for Sales Babble. Lisa Torrez and I met in her office, and we chatted about the strong unemployment numbers, her challenge recruiting professionals, and her plans for hosting in-person networking meetings. Boy, have things changed. And it's amazing how things have changed so quickly. Yet this episode remains relevant, because Lisa shares advice on how to apply and secure a job, which in the case for many, maybe even you or your friends or your family, could be very good stuff. Lisa's a quota-carrying sales professional with in-the-trenches advice, and she shares her daily sales activity process, and she believes that daily goals add up to weekly sales, and she shares how she does it step by step. Before we get to the process this week, I'm hosting a webinar on how to launch a B2B podcast on Wednesday at 1 o'clock Central Time. We're going to talk about B2B organizations and executives and how they can grow authority, influence, and trust that attracts new business through the magic of podcasting. I have links on how to sign up for the Zoom, so if you've ever thought about starting a podcast to generate qualified leads, this webinar is for you. Hope to see you there. Lastly, we'll be talking about this week's podcast on hiring and an activity-based sales process, as well as the podcast webinar on the weekly Sales Babble Telebabble held on Thursday afternoon. I'd really like to see you there, too. So now, with no further ado, let's get to the interview. Welcome, Lisa. Are you ready to babble?
I am.
Lisa, you work at Robert Half. It's a staffing company.
Yes.
What kind of staffing do you do?
Goodness, Robert Half is the largest and the oldest staffing firm in the world. So started more than 70 years ago, and really are the leaders in terms of service solutions in the staffing industry. What I like about Robert Half is the fact that our recruiters are, we have a matrix recruiting strategy, which means that no matter whether we're recruiting in the finance and accounting industry or the legal industry or the technology division, which is where I'm in, we, because we live and breathe those industries every day, our recruiters are sourcing the in-demand positions proactively, so we're anticipating what our clients are going to need. And that, to me, is a game changer, particularly in an environment where the unemployment rate is, particularly in technology,
it's like
less than 1%.
Lowest in my life, and
Exactly.
I've been around a long time.
Less than 1%.
And you do IT people. That's
correct.
That is your niche right now.
That is correct.
And there's not a lot of great IT people out there that are easy to.
No, which is why we have to actively go after passive candidates.
Right.
Yep.
Which makes this kind of a sales job. You're a seller.
I am. I'm an account executive, yes.
And you've been in sales for a long time in your life.
Well, I've been in sales for, actually, the bulk of my career is in human resources, which for me offers a great perspective for the clients that I'm reaching out to, because I was on the other end of the call.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So you haven't been in sales all your life.
Not all my life. No.
You're the evil dog Bert, the HR director.
I am. And it's so funny. When I started here, actually, in the staffing industry, it's like, oh, we don't want to go through HR. I'm like, wait, what's the matter with going through human resources? So,
you know what? By the way, I tell people to go around HR.
Yes, and I hear that all the time. And what I've said here at Robert Half is actually, I partnered with Robert Half when I was in human resources. So, Robert Half was my go-to, particularly for those of those positions that I couldn't fill. I was a full cycle recruiter supporting my divisions on the corporate side. So, there are times when you have to reach out to an agency when you just can't fill it on your own. And so in fact, one of the leadership members that I interviewed with before I was offered the opportunity said, oh, HR, we don't want to go through HR. I'm like, well, why not? They could be strategic partners for you. So I gave him my example. And so I reach out to both, when I'm prospecting,
right.
and, I just cover the gamut of individuals that, I think could benefit from our services.
There was a couple things I want to talk about today, and we were talking last week, and the first thing I want to talk about is your experiences in selling, because the things that you were telling me I thought were really valuable. I think the question I asked you that day was, where do you see salespeople getting it wrong in this business?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I've been on the other end of the conversation, so I think, and actually as I have grown in my own sales roles, I think where sales folks are getting it wrong is not being that consultative or that consultant for organizations, feeling like they've just got to get an order in, they've just got to get a sale, they've got to satisfy their requirements, and really not seeing the big picture in terms of the value that they're offering their clients or prospective clients. You and I talked last week about, that consultative perspective and mind shift. And, here at Robert Half, it's kind of the methodology here is kind of like a culmination of the old traditional sales model and that consultative role, which I really, really love.
How do you see consultative? What does that mean to you?
Consultative to me means that I want to be the person that my clients reach out to when they have a question, when they have an idea to bounce off of, when they are looking at options and trying to determine what is the best route to go. I want them to think of me as a subject matter expert in what I'm selling. And so for knowledge, and what are the hot topics in their industry? Where is the labor market going? Where is, what's the best way to perform workforce planning for their organization? That is, human capital for an organization is one of the top 3 expenses that a company will have. And so it is a huge issue.
That's why we're trying to roboticize everything. We're trying to get rid of people.
Or offshore. And, absolutely. So I want to be that person that they reach out to, whether they place an order with me or not. I want to be that person. It's, you and I talked last week about developing that relationship. And being that person, that resource for them. For me, that's consultative selling.
So that's one thing they're doing wrong. What else?
Goodness. I think, and I don't know that I had a good process when I first started in sales. For me, it was really just kind of like throwing a plate of spaghetti against the wall and seeing what stuck. Mm-hmm. And what was a game changer for me was to implement a process of my activities. So, and I actually was, it's a plug for Sandler because I just really love them. But whatever the methodology would be, I actually had an opportunity to attend a boot camp at the Sandler Naperville location. Yep. And they were really, really outstanding and really demonstrating really a process that you go through in terms of helping your clients to get to a point where they understand the value proposition. So you don't ever have to have a discussion about price. So they understand the value of the resources or the services that you're bringing to the table. But in terms of process, what I mean by that is, what are you going to do every single day to reach your goals? And goals would be either like revenue number, the numbers of job orders you get, the number of starts that you have, the number of shipments out the door, whatever that metric is. What are you going to do every single day to make sure that happens? Which means that you have to know your numbers. So, for example, here, we absolutely know our numbers. Our goals every day are to make 75 cold calls a day. I hate that word, cold calls, but I think everyone knows that term, but 100 prospective calls every day, 75 prospective calls every day. That's going to lead to X number of connects. And our goal is 10 connects a day, which means that somebody has responded to me via email, somebody has reached out to me via phone, or they've liked me, they answer their phone, they've connected with me on LinkedIn, they've messaged me with LinkedIn, they've looked in my general direction purposefully. And those X number of connects are going to yield X number of client visits. We know that X number of client visits, and so my target is, as of now, is 10 client visits a week. And I know that we know from experience that 10 client visits is going to lead to X number of job orders. So my goal is to have, I think it's 2 starts a week. So I back into my daily activities from that end goal. So if you don't know your numbers as a salesperson, you can't translate into what your daily activity should be. And I think that's a huge miss. I think that so many people, I mean, like me when I started was, I'm just going to reach out to everyone I know and they will help me spread the word and orders are going to come my way. And That's not exactly how it works. So just to know your numbers and have a process. So every day I time block my activities. I know that I'm going to make my calls in the morning. I'm going to follow up via email to every single person that I called. I'm going to reach out to them on LinkedIn and I do it over and over again. And I have my client visits in the afternoon. It's a structure. And for me, because I'm a structured person, I feel good. I feel very uneasy when I do not have a plan or a schedule for the day.
Do you block your call time out when you're making 75 calls, or do you really mixing it all up?
I do. I have on my calendar, I block in the morning from 9 to 11. 8:30 to 11 is when I make my calls. I time block my tasks as well. I learned that back in the day where just, things just get so crazy. You really have to allocate time for your tasks, the important ones for sure, and just to ensure that they get done. If for no other reason than whenever you look at your calendar, you know what's on there and you know it has to be done. So I'm not a paper person with a checklist. I'm more, I know that my tasks are going to take X amount of time, so I time block. And that for me, that's the most efficient way to get done what needs to be done.
Interesting. If somebody picks up the phone, though, that could throw you off if you get yourself into a 15, 20-minute phone conversation, right?
Yes, absolutely. Or sometimes, I can't always allocate my client visits or my networking events to the afternoon. So many of them are breakfast or coffee meetings and things like that. But I know that whatever I take away from my morning calls is going to push into the afternoon. So at some point during the day, those calls have to get done.
Yeah. Is there a time of day you found works better?
Mornings for calls. Absolutely.
Really?
And pardon me?
Really?
Absolutely. And actually, so mornings for calls. And then, because, a large majority of the time, I think it's more than 90% of the time, we're leaving voicemails anyway. So people have it in their voicemail box and they listen to it through the course of the day. And they just have that time to pick up their voicemails. I found that and I also send email blasts on a weekly basis to everyone. And so I found that on Thursdays and Friday afternoons actually are the best time for email blasts.
I've heard that actually
Yes.
more people are on LinkedIn on Thursdays than any other day.
Yes.
So if you do a post on Thursday,
Yes.
it's going to get a lot of more views.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's just word of mouth. I don't know if there's any signs behind the internet.
Well, I'm sure LinkedIn can tell you.
So what would a good voicemail sound like that would motivate somebody to call you back?
So there are different reasons, and you really just have to determine what the value that you're going to add for the day is. And so I typically plan out 1 or 2 days out so that I know if I do my week lookout, kind of what I'm going to be offering my contacts. So typically what I try to do is, because I want to showcase the candidate talents and skill sets that we have. Our candidates are constantly, or not constantly, but they're sending out hot candidates or consultants, IT professionals who are rolling off their current projects and going to be ready for availability on their next assignment. And so I want to showcase those skill sets. And so we were doing that, this morning. And so, a good voicemail, something around those lines, or, "Hi, Pat, good morning. This is Lisa with Robert Half Technology. Hey, just checking in with you today for kind of a specific reason. I'm actually calling to let you know that we have 4 IT consultants who are rolling off their current projects and ready for their next assignment and ready for deployment. So we've got Clarence, who's a systems engineer. He, in his most current project, he did ABC. His skill sets and technology are, whole list of status. Yeah. Exactly right. You know what, Pat? I'm interested to learn how these skill sets resonate with what you're seeing in your skill sets for your current bench strength, because we partner with our clients from a staff augmentation perspective, know that we support our clients on a lot of project work, and although you may have a strong IT bench strength, how do these skill sets resonate with what you will need in terms of skill sets for implementing against your strategic project plan?"
That's a mouthful.
Would love to get on your calendar. Blah blah. We don't want to go more than 30 seconds.
That was a long voicemail.
Yeah.
But it was valuable, wasn't it?
I'm giving a summary of the talent that we're promoting, that I follow up. I've got an image of, it's just a really cool summary page of the 4 consultants that I'm promoting that day. And, if I'm reaching out to, I don't know, somebody who's on the infrastructure side, then of course the systems engineer is going to be a great plug. Yep. If I'm working, if I'm calling somebody who's on the application side, then I'm going to call out a developer. So it just really, and then I follow up with a nice email, informative email. And then I also, so it just really depends on who I'm calling.
How long does it take you to write up these emails though?
So I actually, because I'm a little bit of a nerd about like how I'm spending my time, because for me, time is money. So I actually have created my templates in Outlook, and I've saved them. And so I just do I literally just click on the email template for the calls that I'm making, and I plug it in, put their name in, change the messaging if I know them, if I want to put a little, thanks for connecting me on LinkedIn. I'll customize it just a little bit, and then I just send it out right away.
You don't talk about this Clarence guy or anything in the email.
So what I do is I attach the PowerPoint presentation that has Clarence's information and the others, so they have it. So I also, last week, we had, our updated Q3, Q4 demand for skilled talent report, which is, there's so much information there. It really helps clients or companies understand how they can improve their ability to retain and attract candidates. Sent that out, and that was actually, we got terrific feedback from that. I got a lot of calls back on that. So that's how I view my role, is really kind of being that subject matter expert. And because, people are living in the day-to-day, their grind, and it's hard for them to break away, pull out, and just really kind of understand from a holistic perspective what's going on in their industry a lot of times. So that's where I can add value. I'm also going to start here at our brand new shiny office. We're going to start a lunch and learn.
This is a gorgeous office. We should have mentioned this.
I know, it's gorgeous.
Because it's frozen over.
Yeah, when it snows, we feel like we're in a snow globe because there are windows all the way around. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's really awesome. So we're going to invite our clients to come and participate at lunch, provide lunch for those who come on in, and give we're going to have, we've got all sorts of experts here, right? So we're going to have them, one give a presentation, and have it be informative.
Yeah. And I think that's what's interesting. That's a big takeaway I'm getting out of this, is that you're really adding value in these voicemails and these emails that you're sending, and you're following up with these people, you said, often, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I look at the call history too, because I pull up their record. It's like, gosh, if I've hit them like 5 times, no response, then, my voicemail changes a little bit. It's like, hey, look, Pat, I haven't heard from you. I know I've reached out to you. I'm looking at my records here and we haven't had an opportunity to connect. And I'm just wondering if this is value added for you. Like, if you feel it's not, my whole sentiment is, if it's not valuable for my clients, you won't hurt my feelings.
Nope.
No one hurt my feelings
at
all.
Actually doing a favor. It's one less person you got to deal with.
Exactly. And one less person to reach out to. And I can focus my efforts on those who will be clients or continue to develop relationships in my current. Exactly right. Not going to hurt my feelings. So then my voicemail changes a little bit, like, hey, not quite sure if this is in the scope of your role, because sometimes, IT function, it falls under finance, controllers for smaller companies, or under operations. If for smaller companies, it really just depends on where those responsibilities lay. So I kind of don't know unless we have a conversation. That's what the voicemail is like. Look, let me know. I'm happy to just kind of get off your radar if you're not the right person, or point me in the right direction. Who is that right person in your organization for me to reach out to?
Right.
It's okay to ask those questions.
Right.
And I think people are just like so afraid to hurt feelings or say that no. It's like they don't want to do it, and they're just like, okay, I'm not going to respond. I'm just not going to say anything.
Did you hear the article last week? How Midwesterners are really nice about that.
Yes.
They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Midwesterners we are super nice.
But at the same time, they're very close-minded.
They
just won't tell you they're not. But they're very, they have good manners.
Yes. I would agree with that. Yeah, so it's really interesting. And so early on in my sales experiences, I would have really shied away from being that open. It was sort of like, but it was through the Sandler boot camp that I took, where they really drove that home. It was like, no, it's okay. It's okay to ask that question. It's okay to be that bold. You can focus, you can shift and focus on, creating business from other avenues.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your candidates. There's one thing I wanted to do before we left, is that where do people screw up when they're interviewing for jobs? Or what advice do you have? Who are the people that really knock it out of the park? How does that work?
Oh, from a candidate perspective. Yeah. Oh gosh. I would say, and it's so funny because in the technology world, I mean, the demand is so high that I feel like candidates feel like they've got it. If a recruiter is reaching out to them, they've got it in the bag, and it's so not true. Particularly for the candidates that we identify to propose to or present to our clients, our candidates, is that the candidates are really, they still need to. I still love it, and I might be old school when I love it when we do our Skype interviews or Facebook interviews. And the candidate will actually put on a shirt and a tie and a jacket for the Skype call.
I love that.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, they could be in their pajama bottoms, and it doesn't matter. They've dressed for the opportunity, and just to be interested, to be engaged in the interview process, to just really want it, and show the employer, the prospective employer, that they do want it. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah. I mean, they should never think that they have it in the bag.
No.
Mm-mm.
No.
And I think just, because the negotiation process is what it is, just asking for way too much, particularly if they don't have the skill set, if they don't have the experience level. If they're just out of college or less than 3 years of experience, asking for the moon and back is probably not the right situation. But what we do here is we coach our candidates.
You do?
Absolutely. We coach our candidates before they even get close to our
I have
clients.
people reach out to me all the time for help with probably at least 3-4 times a year.
Yeah.
Somebody will know somebody, a friend of mine, who says, "Oh, don't go talk to Pat. He can help you get a job." Yeah. And usually I do things like this. And it's surprising how some people are very coachable and some people aren't.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Not everyone is for this, but yeah.
No, not everyone is. What's the one thing you'd like the listeners to take to take away from in this chat? What's something they could take action on this week?
I think the thing that I try to keep top of mind when I'm doing my role is, I think most salespeople have heard of or incorporated the know, like, trust piece of it. You have to give a prospective client or, those an opportunity to get to know you, to get to like you, and to trust you. And then they may do business with you if they have a need down the road. And so I'm very in tune to, particularly when I'm talking to someone on the phone or meeting with them, and just being very aware of how they're presenting themselves and in tune to myself, even to the point where I focus on the intonation in my voice. Mm-hmm. So if I've got somebody who's kind of like a low talker and a little bit more timid, right, I'm not going to come out really bold. I'm going to try and match them. And it's not because I want to copy or I'm being a chameleon. It's because I want them to feel comfortable with me. And so it's like a relation. It's building like any other relationship we would develop in our lives. It's taking the time to get to know that individual. I believe that karma is karma, and that if you throw enough out there, it'll come back to you. That's what I've experienced in my life, and I'm so blessed, and I really feel like it works, and that's just my belief, and so I think just putting enough good actions out there and not expecting anything in return, and then just giving an opportunity for people to get to know you.
How can people find you online?
I am on LinkedIn. So Lisa Torrez, Torrez, with Robert Half Technology. And that's probably the best way. Reach out to me on LinkedIn.
And that's how you and I are connected. Although you and I met it through a meetup, I believe.
Yes, we did.
Aurora.
Yes.
Yeah, Judd's.
I loved your presentation. It was fantastic.
What did I talk on?
It was the podcasting.
Was it on podcasting?
Yeah, it was.
I've talked to her a couple times this year, or last year, I should say.
Yes, last year.
So I don't recall exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was fantastic.
Well, Lisa, thank you very much for babbling here on Sales Babble.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's been a blast.
Sales Babble is sponsored by Habanero Media, a podcasting agency for B2B brands. Podcasting is the easiest way to turn your executives into thought leaders with content that reaches your ideal clients. Haven't you heard that podcasting is the new blogging? Start a podcast today. Go to habaneromedia.net. That's habanero with an H, like the hot pepper. It's a hot idea. Go to habaneromedia.net and start podcasting today. We talked about a ton of stuff on this podcast this week. If you go to the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/320, you can find links to Lisa and her profile on LinkedIn, as well as Robert Half. You can also find links to how to launch a B2B podcast webinar. That will be in there too, as well as the Sales Babble Telebabble on Thursday. There's a lot going on this week here in the Sales Babble community. I know you visited us here on the podcast. Come see us elsewhere. It'll be fun. If you found value in this podcast, please share it with your friends. Word of mouth is how podcasts grow. If you got any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out. Find me on LinkedIn. Shoot me a question. I'll answer it. That's all we've got for this week. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.